Okay, independent thinking skills. So independent thinking skills are different to self-efficacy and different sets of skills that are taught. First of all, we've got to understand how we've moved from the concept of thinking to thinking skills. So for years and years and years throughout history and through time, they knew that thinking existed. It was that abstract concept, something happened inside your head, and it was about making sense of the world in which we live. Developed from that is a concept of thinking skills, because there's been a desire for us to actually develop the ability of people to think. If it becomes a skill, we can develop it. So thinking skills became the concept. And there are two broad categories of thinking skills: critical thinking skills and creative thinking skills. The critical ones are where you're reflecting on your existing knowledge and experience. But your creative ones are where you're starting to develop new ideas, things that haven't been thought about before. Independent thinking skills, which is what we're focusing on, can be referred to as critical thinking skills, sometimes referred to as critical thinking skills, but it's all about reflective thinking that's focused on deciding what to believe or do. So it's conscious thought about what you believe in, or conscious thought about the actions you're going to take. Reynolds in 2011 came up with this list of core thinking skills. So he had observation, which is being able to observe and note things; interpretation, which is making meaning; analysis, analysing, digging into the data to understand why things are happening; inference, which is drawing conclusions; evaluating, which is assessing and judging and appraising; explaining, which is being able to retell something to somebody else; and metacognition, which is thinking about your own thinking. Some of those skills, clearly at the special school, they're never going to get to. But what an independent thinker can do is these three things. They can clearly explain why they performed an action. So there's a reason they did the action. It wasn't just an action that happened. They can clearly present a valid argument. Valid meaning that it's built on some sort of evidence or some sort of opinion, and they can structure it in a way that makes it a meaningful argument. And thirdly, they can reflect on their own actions and the outcomes of these actions. So if they do something and get a negative outcome, they can reflect on that and change the action in the first place. So an independent thinker can explain why they're doing an action, can present valid arguments, and they can reflect on their own actions and those outcomes. There's many different models of independent thinking. Bloom's taxonomy, which is this one, is one very common model. Basically, you see an iceberg model in front of you with a list of thinking skills. The higher up the pyramid you go, the higher order that thinking skill is. So technically, creating is a harder skill to do than analysing. But being in the iceberg model, it needs all those ones underneath it. So you can't create without first remembering, understanding, applying, analysing, and evaluating. So this model of independent thinking skill gives you a progression that you could work through. It'd be interesting to note and have a look in your classroom to see what levels they're actually getting to. If you think about you in particular in this grade 12 class, you are quite often hitting the creating. We're asking you to create all the time. So you have easily remembered and understood and applied and analysed and evaluated things that may not be as evident in the special school classroom.